Let's start off with VSA requirements since it was first. As you'll remember, VSA is actually implemented with virtual appliances. So it's implemented at virtual appliance level on 2 or 3 hosts. It's not embedded into the vSphere itself. So what are the requirements? Well, it requires vCenter of 5x, or 5.0, 5.1, 5.5. It requires 2 or 3 vSphere hosts, right? ESXi 5.0, 5.1, 5.5 hosts, VSA appliance on each one, and either SATA or SAS controllers, but you can't mix them. Either SATA or SAS, but not both. It requires RAID 5, 6, or what some people call 10, others call 1+0 on each one of the hosts, and at least 4 NIC ports for each host. And as I said, as you do the installation, you do a pristine installation of a host, then you install the vSphere appliance on each one, and it'll walk you through, and it'll end up stitching itself together with the other hosts. So those are the major requirements for VSA. So what are the major requirements for VSAN? Well, VSAN is built into the vSphere environment at the cluster level. So if you've created a cluster, you've already done a lot of the requirement for VSAN. Now, you do have to have the right type of host, but nowadays hosts come with a little bit of solid state drive. At least a lot of them do. And so what VSAN does is leverages what you probably already have, which is some local spinning disk capacity and a solid state drive. And what VSAN is going to do is use that local spinning disk capacity for the VSAN data store to set up a shared data store. And it's going to use the solid state drive for fast thinking, for read caching and write buffering. And so you need at least 3 vSphere hosts, and you have to have 5.5. And you need each host to have solid state drives, a solid state drive, and a spinning disk. The disks will actually be paired up. RAID is not required. In fact, RAID would get in the way, because what VSAN is going to do is control each one of those individual disks. So RAID is not a requirement at all. And SAS controllers are required for the solid state and the spinning disks. And then VSAN requires its own enabled VM kernel port. It used to be that when we would teach about VM kernel ports, we would say that they could be used for one of 4 things. It was for IP storage, for vMotion, for fault-tolerant logging, or for management. Well, now there's a 5th, and that would be VSAN enabled. And there's actually a checkbox when you create a VM kernel port on vSphere 5.5 to check it for VSAN services. It doesn't necessarily have to be its own physical NIC, although, as you know, that's a good best practice, is to have every separate service have its own separate physical NIC. But those are the differences between the VSAN requirements and the VSA requirements. And as you can see, they have some similarity, but they're very different. It's also different the way that VSA actually handles a failure versus what VSAN does in order to protect virtual machines. And so we'll discuss VSA failure and VSAN failure in regard to protecting virtual machines next.